Music bed. Music bed.
When my mom and dad, before I was married, they were already in the process of going through a separation. My dad he was the late 70s, he got hooked on crack cocaine. He's a dog trainer, great dog trainer, but also really heavy into drugs at the time. So he kind of took off. He came back one night on my mom's birthday and raped her, and that's how I was conceived. So I grew up most of my life like being retold that story. I remember my mom would get mad at me and get upset at me. She would remind me that they had an appointment to abort me because I was, a product of rape by someone high on crack. That's why I'm here. And so she would tell me that a lot when she was mad at me, which always kind of gave me this feeling of like just not really being wanted, I guess. I really do believe that like the stuff I had to listen to as a kid is a big reason why I work with animals that aren't wanted and animals that have been abandoned and animals that nobody really wants to have around anymore. I think that's why I feel a bit of a kinship. They still had statewide breed-specific legislation, so we call them breed bans. So Ohio was the last state in the union when I took over the shelter where all pit bulls were considered vicious at birth. The moment they were born, you have a vicious animal in your hands. So a lot of shelters wouldn't adopt them out, a lot of them got euthanized. Specifically, any pit bull that had any kind of behavior problem whatsoever was for sure euthanized. The best of the best might have a chance to get adopted, but that was few and far between. That was my first chance to really experience breed discrimination. So that really bothered me, but I didn't know what to do. I kept doing my job. I kept holding dogs that were deemed to be euthanized because I was the only man at the shelter, putting them on catch pulls while the veterinarian would sedate them and euthanize them because that was the job.
Music bed.
At this point in time, 2012, Ohio had finally gotten rid of statewide breed-specific legislation. They overturned the pit bull dangerous dog ordinance inside the law. But there were still a lot of people that just didn't, like them, didn't feel safe around them, didn't trust them. They had all these preconceived ideas from this, long-standing breed ban, the oldest one in the country. So a lot of shelters, if I brought them a pit bull that had any kind of behavior issues, because of the way it was treated, they would say, well, we're gonna have to put this dog down. I thought, well, what the hell am I doing this for then? Why am I going to go and take this dog off of a chain and take it over here to this building if they're just going to euthanize it? It was a real quandary, it was a real moral issue that I had. So I started taking them home. I didn't know, but I felt like if I could just give the dog some time and change their environment, give them a better environment, the behavior would change. And that started to work pretty well. I left the shelter, I started my own nonprofit. I focused on, instead of my county, statewide assistance. We went all over the state. When I say we, I mean myself mostly. It was a one-man operation. I had a small board, but I was basically doing all the work myself.
Music bed.
The main objective is to understand special needs dogs, fractured dogs, dogs who have a bite history of a level 4 or higher. And we talk about levels, there's level 1 through 6. 6 means something died. 1 means it's like an air snap. So 4 is obviously pretty high, so just to give you an idea. So 4 through 6 is kind of what we specialize. So we have dogs who have killed other dogs. We have dogs who have put people in the hospital for extended periods of time. These are the kinds of dogs I wasn't able to help a few years ago because I didn't know better. I didn't have the funding to create a facility that could safely and appropriately care for them. I didn't have the money to hire staff to help work with me on the ranch every day. Honestly, the intent here is, I guess a little bit of saving grace. There's dogs that I failed. And I don't want to do that ever again. And I know I can't fix every dog. I know it's not that simple. So at least if I can give them a safe place, maybe it'll make up for my failures, I guess, to be honest. On a more optimistic note, there are still plenty of dogs that come and go and come and go. So another focus here is taking dogs that rescues have committed to from the shelter those dogs where it really is as simple as changing the environment and changing the behavior. But most fosters that want to foster for a rescue organization, they're not really dog savvy. They don't know how to do the decompression. They don't know how to do all that
Music
stuff.
bed.
And they see this dog and they want to save the dog, but the dog, because they're at the shelter, they're pretty frantic. So another part is to let those dogs come here, let them hang out for a couple weeks, let them hang out with my helper dogs, play in play groups, get all that energy, get all that anxiety out. That way when the rescue takes them back, it's just, you know, a regular dog.
Music
The
bed.
same kind of dogs that for years I was able to turn around and adopt and turn them before I got into the more serious cases. So the more mild cases, again, they usually come from rescues or private owners. We have, you know, about a third of our population here are owned by private clients who adopted a dog that they didn't know was a reactive dog or a special needs dog or a fractured dog.
Music
But
bed.
once they made that commitment, they couldn't send the dog back to the shelter. So they come here for a while as well to kind of learn some life skills. And again, not to fix them. I'm not a mechanic and their dog is in the car, but to help understand the dog. Understand what tools can keep the dog safe and what can give their dog a high quality of life, even while still having these special needs
Music
and these
bed.
triggers, but keeping a high quality of life and keeping everyone safe. How do we balance all of that? And that's kind of what we figure out here, in addition to giving some dogs that really aren't safe a sanctuary
Music
that
bed.
I wasn't able to before.
Music
The
bed.
biggest phrase that you'll hear in the animal welfare community is, it's all about the animals, which sounds great, right? But the reality is, the real phrase is, there's a subtitle underneath that. It says, it's all about the animals, as long as you do things my way. And if you don't, that's when those trust issues come in, and that's when the infighting
Music
comes in.
bed.
So you have the shelter with standards, and shelters are changing now. I'm gonna spend a while in Austin, Texas. They're the leader of the no-kill movement in the country. They save thousands and thousands of dogs there every year. And one of the things that impressed me the most about Austin is they no longer call it animal control. Here we have ACOs,
Music bed.
Animal Control Officer. They call them Animal Protection Officers. Because the old way of thinking was the pound, if you look at Lady and the Tramp, look at any old movie, the pound existed to keep the public safe from stray dogs. That was their only role, was public safety. There was no afterthought to
Music
the
bed.
animal's care, to what happened to the animal. None of that was a thought process. But not that they were evil or malicious, that was just the way it was formed, you know, 150 some odd years ago when we started
Music bed.
having, you know, taxpayer-funded shelters. So people think in their minds that that's the intent of the shelter. And then we have a lot of people who say, no, like we should be, people that run private rescues and people with big hearts, they go, no, we should be doing more. We shouldn't be just controlling the animals to keep all these like dangerous, you know, Cujo dogs from the, you know,
Music
from the
bed.
public. But there's been a lag between that thought process in the public and the people who run shelters realizing, okay, it's not just about animal care and keeping the public safe. We also have to protect the animals as well as the public. And that, I hope we all kind of get to the same page eventually and all this
bed.
goes away. But I think that's kind of the reason why we have that fighting and that infighting. And that's why I try to maintain like my human empathy and my people skills. And yes, I'm on the private side now as the rescuer and the trainer who takes all the at-risk cases, but I was also on that side, you know, holding the dogs down while the vet euthanized them and
Music
putting them in
bed.
body bags and carrying those bags and crying and kissing the top of a trash bag and saying, I'm sorry, before I put that dog in her freezer. I've been on that side too, you know? It sucks, I hate thinking about it, I hate talking about it. You can tell I'm probably getting a little emotional, I hate it. But it's the reality of life, it's the reality of working with these dogs. So that's why I try to go into these shelters, not from like an
Music bed.
attack position. I don't try and slam them, I don't try and slam the rest, I don't try and slam anybody. Even the people that want to slam me, like there's just, it's not productive. And I think coming from a level-headed
Music
kind of
bed.
approach, where you don't demonize the shelter workers for doing what's been their job for a long time, and you just say, hey, look, here are some other ideas. And instead of telling them how to do it, we show them how to do it. That's why I take my dog Bullwinkle with me. We go to the shelters and say, hey, here's a stable helper dog. Show me one of your Cujo dogs. Let's see what we can do. And they
Music
go,
bed.
oh my God, that worked great. Hey, we have a dog at the shelter who could probably do that too. So for me, it's always been more about showing people how to do better than telling them what they're doing wrong. And that approach has made a huge difference. It's made a big difference in Orange County. And I did a lot of work out in Ohio with different shelters where that made a big difference too.
Music bed.